Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Of course.
Especially like so soon after such an amazing match with Thunder Rosa. And now that we're a few weeks removed from it, how do you feel about the reaction, and was the match everything you wanted it to be?
I'm very relieved. That's probably the best word because we had a lot of pressure on us, a lot of pressure in the division to really to show out and make a point, make a statement,
Hmm.
and prove a lot of people wrong. And there's nothing I like more than proving somebody wrong and saying I told you so. So I'm just thrilled with how everything came off with the reaction. I couldn't have asked for anything better, and I wouldn't change a thing.
What was it like for you watching it? Did you, when it was over, did you kind of hesitate before looking online to see what people say?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I think wrestlers, a lot of us were such like psychopaths and head cases that we always are on Twitter to seek approval or say what,
Mhm.
who's talking shit today. It's just how it works. But it was just so overwhelmingly positive that my phone was blowing up. It was everything you dream of as a wrestler. Is like
Mhm.
you're this acceptance from your peers, your coaches, your bosses, and then the harshest critics of them all, the fans.
Mhm.
So it was really, really, really a cool night.
Hmm. What was it that made Thunder Rosa, do you think, the perfect person to do this with you?
It's I always say that we just complement each other so well because we're opposites with everything that we do. Our style, our demeanor, our attitude. I keep saying it 100 times because she said it first, but
Mhm.
she's the Batman, I'm the Joker, and they need each other for the story
Mhm.
to work. And I think that's really what complemented the whole story as a whole.
Mhm. Did you feel any like significant change in the women's division once they brought her in?
I think this over the pandemic as a whole has really had a lot of good changes for the women's division, bringing in Serena, the NWA women's title, Thunder Rosa, just have Layla, just having more women that we can showcase because there's so many talented women wrestlers today. It's crazy. So just as a whole, having expanding our roster during the pandemic has been awesome, and it's sad that we can't do it in front of fans yet, but
Mhm.
we're all just chomping at the bit to have those full arenas.
Mhm. Before you actually went out there for the match, did you try not to think about the gravity of it, with it being the first women's main event and the first women's lights out match?
No, I couldn't not think about it. I couldn't get it
Yeah.
out of my head because it was Jerry Lynn, who was our coach, had said multiple times throughout the day, he said, you guys have a chance to make history tonight.
Mhm.
And I already knew that. And I the night before had to kind of hype myself up, watched the Trish and Lita main event match from Raw. So, and I just think of like the gravity of that match, of how it's remembered as one of like the best, one of the most iconic women's matches of all time. I
Mhm.
wanted to go in having that same mentality. Like, I want this match to be remembered. I want this to be
Mhm.
something that people talk about forever, not just for this week or not just for tonight. Or I just really wanted to go down as something that is remembered.
Mhm. Was there a match that you watched that made you want to wrestle?
I there's so many. I really liked watching NXT early on. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always the Bailey, Becky, Sasha. I love Natalia and Charlotte. There's so many. The
Mhm.
the girls are actually still wrestling now, who are in a sense my competition in the other company, are the ones that I grew up, and I looked at them. I looked at them then as my role models in a sense now, and I still do now because
Mhm.
they're the best.
Did it at all, was it on your mind that Kenny and John Moxley had the Exploding Barbed Wire match before, another hardcore match so close to the one that you were having, that you could have that direct comparison?
No, I didn't really think about that at all actually until you
Mhm.
said it now. But I talk to Kenny every other day, and I ask Kenny for help all the time because he's to me he's a wrestling genius, and he's one of the best in the world, if not the best. And he's really been like a coach for the women and for me especially. So he's somebody actually that right before the match gave me a little pep talk that really I said he sent me in for war. I was ready to go after that. And speaking of Moxley I had talked to throughout the day too, just asking him for a little tids of advice because that's his world. That style of match is like he's a pro at it. I've never done it in my life. I didn't even know how to set up a table, let alone you have a fight through one. So there was people all day that I was asking for help.
Mhm. So you were the first woman signed to AEW. With it being a new company, how was AEW sold to you as a company and with a women's division?
The big, flashing marquee for me was that Kenny Omega was going to be overseeing it because I was such a Kenny fan, especially once I became a wrestler and was wrestling matches. His stuff in New Japan was so fascinating to me. And it wasn't just that he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, it's his character. He was such like a weirdo, like such a weird guy that I was fascinated with. So it was very intriguing to me. So to find out that I was going to get to work with him was amazing to me. I couldn't say no to that. And then also the fact that I was going to be able to continue dentistry because I went to school for 8 years and I didn't want to just throw that out the window and like attempt to come back to it later when I was done wrestling, because wrestling isn't forever. That's no secret, especially for women. And I want to have a family and kids someday too. So I was realistic about, I don't want to put all my eggs in this wrestling basket because what if it's like 2 years I get hurt or I'm done and then I have nothing. So the fact that I get to do them both, and Tony is he's the absolute best human being in the world to work for. The other reason why I chose AEW, I think everybody on the roster can agree with me in saying that we all just work so hard to make him proud because he really does create such a family environment and he treats us so well and with such respect that you can't not want to work for this man and make him proud.
Going on for that, like with WWE, we see a lot of them do like women's first, like women can finally have a Royal Rumble and stuff like that. When AEW was starting, among the women and with Tony and Kenny, was there conversations about how they can present women initially and what they can give them in the division?
Yeah, so I know that they was definitely, they wanted to showcase the Joshi women's wrestling in North America because they're so talented.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that we get to kind of mix all the different styles and cultures of all the women we have now, because we have so many different styles of wrestling. I mean, there's myself and Layla Hirsch are two different, totally completely different women's wrestlers. Myself and Riho, myself and Nyla. There's so many different boxes that we're checking in sort of sense, if that's what you're looking for. But it's not even just that, it's just they're all great women's wrestlers and good people on top of that.
So when you had your injury, where did it come about for you to stay on TV, and when and how did that conversation happen?
So there wasn't really a direct conversation. It was just that the nature of my injury was only going to keep me out for like 3 or 4 months. So that's it's way better than something that's like 9 months, because there's only so much you can do to stay relevant for 9 months, right?
Yeah.
But it was Tony, Cody, and Kenny really that had the ideas just to keep me doing little promos, vignettes, and helping me with those too, because the heel character was really getting, a little bit of buzz behind it. Especially we just added Reba to my character, so to say. And then I was in the middle of the feud with Swole. So it just kind of made sense. And I was so thankful that I got to stay on TV, and any opportunity I had, I was going to run with it because I didn't want to get taken off.
During that, we saw you work a lot with Tony Schiavone. What's it like working with him, and how did that come about?
Yeah. He's like actually one of my best friends in real life, not in wrestling world too. We talk almost every day. We FaceTime. It's so funny that he's actually one of my best friends. But I always say that I don't think that I would be where I am right now as in character wise without Tony, because he's so complimentary to Britt Baker, the evil bitch, really, because he's so likable and everybody loves Tony Schiavone, and he's just so wonderful. He goes with the flow, he goes along with it, he takes my mental abuse and he does it with a smile, and he's just such an endearing person, and I love him. I'm so thankful for him. He helps me so much, always gives me feedback on everything that I do, And he really, like, the wrestling world is a better place with Tony Schiavone in it.
And you and Reba also have such great chemistry. How did that come about, and what did you guys bond over?
Yeah, so we had been friends before. We both live in Orlando. But when we were doing the vignettes, the rules of being a role model in Orlando, Florida, where I live at my dental office, she was on the makeup team at the time, the AEW Glam Squad. So she was on the set doing my makeup. And then I believe it was Cody or Tony had the idea to use her as someone like much like Tony to just take some mental abuse
Yeah.
for me to bully up on, and it was just so good, and our chemistry was so good that we just had to keep going. We had to keep rolling with it because she's like absolutely fantastic at her work and what she does, and she's so passionate about professional wrestling too. I can't say that enough. I always tell people, you guys don't understand. Like, she's watching wrestling with me all the time on the couch, like studying stuff with me. We go and train together all the time to help me get better in the ring. But she's just as much of a part of the act. So I say she's just as important in all my matches as I am.
When you started doing the heel character, can you think of a moment where you just felt it all clicked and you've now totally absorbed it and become comfortable with it?
No, because I think I'm always learning, and I'm always finding new layers to peel back for like who is heel Britt Baker and the different sides of it. But I think when I did the live promo in Cleveland, I did, and I really got some strong boos to the point where I couldn't hear myself. I couldn't hear myself over the speaker system. So I just had to like remind myself, okay, look in the camera because there's people at home listening, because no one in the arena could hear what I was saying at the end. And I was like, wow, this is heat. Like, they're booing you right now. This is good. So there's never one moment where anything has clicked, because I still feel like I'm learning every week.
What is like the best learning you guys have, because you don't have a performance center set up, but your promos are so good, but you're also so good at finding the camera and like with the blood at the end of the match and just getting that. Like, where does all that come from, and how do you learn it?
That I just kind of learned on the fly. I remember when we were in Atlanta doing tapings right before the pandemic. It was just us in the Nightmare Factory. There were no fans at all. It was just a small little section we had taped off with the ring where we could film. And I had broken my nose in the middle of the match, and I knew it was broken. The blood was like flowing everywhere. But in that space specifically, I noticed the red light bouncing around on all the different floor cameras, meaning like, oh, this camera's on, this camera's on, and something just clicked with me, like, follow the red light. Like, when you're executing wrestling moves or in the match, you're focusing on that. But when it's time to entertain, like, there's no one better than me, because I'm gonna find that red light and pan to it for sure.
So being a dentist, do you have any stories about people finding out that you're also a wrestler, whether it be patients or other dentists?
No, it's always an awkward conversation to have.
Yeah.
And my assistants and my hygienists like to pick on me more, because they know that it's not a conversation I want to have, because I'm very professional as a dentist, and I want the patients to be in and out just like they want to. We don't want to sit there and talk forever. And also, you can't be talking because I need to be in your mouth.
Yes.
So but my assistant, my hygienist, they always like pick on me. Every once in a while, they'll be like, she's a wrestler, right? And then it's a whole conversation, and I just like stare at them through my mask, like, really, we have to do this today.
When you do have to talk to, I don't want to say normal people, but people that aren't in wrestling about it, is there anything that you kind of like to convey to them about what wrestling actually is that they might not understand?
It's I'm stealing a quote from my boyfriend, but he always says that it's a mix of like UFC fighting with Game of Thrones. Like, it's very much, it's story based, but it's also fighting. So it's something that you do have to watch it week to week to know what's going on, to get invested in the story. But it's also something too, if you're flicking through the channels, you could see something happening in a match that you're like, wow, that's fascinating.
When was the assumption among like your friends and family that you'd stop wrestling when you qualified as a dentist?
So my mom and dad were not thrilled with the whole wrestling the adventure that I was under, and I didn't even tell them
Mhm.
for like the first 6 months that I was training because I knew they were going to hate it.
Yeah.
Because it's common sense, really. You're guaranteed success as a dentist. You're not guaranteed or promised anything as a wrestler.
Mhm.
So I think they just didn't want me to get hurt, and they didn't want me to throw dentistry out the door.
Mhm.
Now they're my biggest fans. They don't miss anything. My dad stops people in my like grocery store hometown to talk about me. Hey, did you see Britt Smash? Like he's my biggest fan, really. But it's it all comes down to AEW. Thank God for AEW because I get to be a dentist and a wrestler at the same time.
What was your parents' and reaction to the match with Thunder Rosa?
Oh no. So my mom had to drink. She had alcohol because she was
Mhm.
very stressed out. And I didn't know, and because I had seen my parents the next weekend, then we were visiting my brother, and
Mhm.
I didn't know that my dad had convinced her that the blood was fake. So
Oh.
when she was talking to me and she says, "Oh my God, how did they get that fake blood to look so real?" And I'm like, Mom, it wasn't fake. Like I was bleeding. I didn't know. I'm like, Dad, you need to cue me in on these things. I would have went with it. I would have been like, oh yeah, it's fake. No, so that was a whole other thing. But my dad's more behind it. My mom gets so nervous and so worried. She doesn't like tables, ladders, chairs, anything like that.
Mhm. And at Revolution, you teamed up with Makito. What would she like to work with, and do you want to see more of her in AEW?
Of course. I mean, she's got the fans in the palm of her hand. They love
Mhm.
her. And she's such a fun little spunky girl to be around too. She's just got just a fun energy around her.
Mhm. And finally, what do you want to see next for the AEW women's division, and who do you think's really coming up and impressing you on shows like Dark and Elevation?
Yeah. So I hope we can carry on this momentum right
Mhm.
now because we're in the spotlight for a good reason for
Yeah.
once. So I really want us to continue with the women's division and having good storylines, good angles, good matches. I can't wait to one day get my shot at Sheeta again for the women's championship title. As far as people that are the women's division as a whole is doing so well right now. It's heartbreaking that Anna Jay has the injury when she does because she's going to be an absolute star. She's way too good. She shouldn't be this good for how inexperienced she is, but
Mhm.
she's going to be absolutely a rock star in professional wrestling.